Have you ever wondered what it truly takes to live a peaceful and fulfilling life as you grow older? Many people envision their later years surrounded by family or receiving professional care, but the reality can be far from what they expect. In today's video, we're diving into the challenges faced by elderly individuals as they navigate their later years, from living with children to hiring caregivers or moving into nursing homes. But what happens when none of these options truly fit? What do you do when the systems you rely on fail to provide the comfort and independence you crave? Stay with us to uncover how one woman, Sachiko, discovered a surprising yet incredibly simple solution that changed the way she approaches her final years. By watching until the end, you'll learn about the emotional and psychological struggles many seniors face, how family dynamics can shift as they age, and how finding the right balance between independence and care is more important than ever. Don't miss the incredible turn of events in Sachiko's story that will leave you inspired and reflect on your approach to aging. If you're curious about how to make your golden years truly fulfilling, keep watching. This might just be the answer you're looking for. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. When deciding where to live during their later years, many elderly individuals often consider moving closer to their children, hoping to gain a profound sense of security and emotional comfort. Being near family can offer invaluable care and unwavering support, which are especially comforting as they navigate the vulnerabilities of aging. However, this seemingly ideal arrangement often masks challenges that can quietly strain relationships. The differences in lifestyles, habits, and expectations between two, sometimes even 3, generations frequently spark misunderstandings and conflicts in daily life. These tensions can chip away at the warm, harmonious family atmosphere that everyone envisioned. It's heartbreaking to realize that for some elderly parents, the dream of living close to their children becomes a source of stress. After attempting this living arrangement for a while, many decide to move away, disheartened by the inability to reconcile these differences, leaving behind unfulfilled hopes of familial closeness. For those who decide to hire helpers instead, the situation can be equally complex. While this option allows elderly individuals to maintain their independence and avoid lifestyle clashes with family, it comes with significant financial challenges. Hiring a full-time caregiver can cost around 5 to 6 million yen per month, a staggering amount that often surpasses the modest pensions many seniors rely on. This financial burden weighs heavily on their minds, forcing them to make careful and often painful decisions. It's disheartening to think that the cost of quality care can strip some elderly individuals of their peace of mind, leaving them to choose between financial security and the assistance they desperately need. Opting for a nursing home might seem like the most practical solution, but it, too, comes with its own set of emotional and logistical difficulties. The cost of living in such facilities is far from affordable, and for many elderly people, adjusting to the regimented lifestyle of communal living can feel like losing a part of themselves. The strict schedules for meals, rest, and activities can be a tough adjustment for those who treasure their freedom and independence. While some eventually adapt, the emotional toll of giving up autonomy cannot be overlooked. It's a sacrifice that many make with heavy hearts. What's even more challenging is the social environment within nursing homes. These facilities bring together individuals from diverse backgrounds and personalities, making conflicts almost inevitable. Minor disagreements over seemingly trivial matters can escalate, disrupting the peace that many seniors desperately seek. For those who value harmony and tranquility, the thought of living in an environment where clashes are commonplace can be deeply unsettling. This reality leads many elderly individuals to avoid nursing homes altogether, even if it means facing loneliness or other challenges elsewhere. The decisions surrounding elderly care are fraught with emotional weight and practical dilemmas. It's a poignant reminder of how aging often forces individuals to navigate a labyrinth of imperfect options, each demanding its own sacrifices. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Mrs. Sachiko, now gracefully entering her 80th year, has weathered the passage of time with a quiet resilience that speaks volumes about the strength of her spirit. Over the years, she has explored the most common forms of elderly care, living with her children, hiring helpers, and even staying in a nursing home. Yet, none of these options felt like the right fit for her. Despite the comforts they offered, she found herself yearning for something more, something that would allow her to spend her later years with dignity, independence, and a sense of peace. Then, by what can only be described as a stroke of good fortune, she discovered a way of life that suited her, one that has allowed her to live more contentedly than she ever thought possible in these later years. This newfound lifestyle, carefully cultivated and unexpectedly found, has become the key to her peace and comfort as she continues to age, and she has embraced it with the deep relief of someone who has finally found their way. Sachiko's journey through life has not been without heartache. She is a widow, and her story took a devastating turn when her beloved husband, who had been by her side through thick and thin, passed away suddenly at the age of 80. His death was a profound loss that shook her to her core, leaving her to face the later years of her life without the person who had been her companion, her partner, and her best friend for so long. Before his passing, they had shared a life filled with mutual support, understanding, and love, a life where no challenge was too great because they were always there for each other. They were inseparable, as though their souls were intertwined, walking side by side through every hardship, triumph, and quiet moment. They planned to spend their entire lives together, caring for one another in their old age, growing old side by side, never imagining that life would take such an abrupt and heartbreaking turn. During their many years of marriage, whenever either of them became ill, the other would tend to them without hesitation. Sachiko's husband was her constant, always there to make sure she had everything she needed, whether it was in times of illness or simply navigating the mundane aspects of daily life. He would accompany her to the hospital without complaint, standing by her side in the long, crowded waiting rooms, always managing the details, appointments, payments, prescriptions, so that she could focus on feeling better. She remembers with deep fondness how he would take care of everything, from arranging the doctor's appointments to making sure they had the necessary medicine, all while never once making her feel like a burden. In those moments, the hospital was no longer a place of anxiety or discomfort but a place where she could feel safe, knowing that everything would be handled. The simple act of him being there, holding her hand, and taking charge of the logistics of their care filled her with a sense of comfort and security that words could never fully capture. However, since his passing, everything has changed. Hospital visits, which were once a shared experience, have now become a source of immense stress and emotional strain. As she ages, Sachiko finds that her health is declining, and each visit to the doctor or the hospital is a reminder of just how much she has lost. What once felt like a manageable task has now become a monumental effort. She feels the weight of each step, the heaviness of each decision that must be made on her own. She no longer has the comforting presence of her husband beside her, managing the appointments, filling out the forms, paying the bills, and providing a sense of calm amidst the chaos. Now, she must navigate the long, crowded hallways of the hospital, waiting in line for hours, struggling to keep track of her medical information, and feeling the toll it takes on her body. Tasks that once seemed so trivial now drain her energy and spirit. Every hospital visit is a reminder of her fragility, a stark contrast to the confidence and assurance she once had when they went together. Adding to this struggle is her deep-seated reluctance to ask for help from her children. Sachiko has a son and a daughter, both of whom she loves dearly, but she is hesitant to lean on them. She is acutely aware of their busy lives, filled with their own families, careers, and the pressures that come with adulthood. They are each managing their burdens, trying to balance the demands of work and family, and Sachiko cannot bring herself to add to their stress. She often finds herself thinking that she has no right to ask for their help when they have their challenges to face. Her sense of independence, which was once a cornerstone of her identity, now seems to be slipping away. She never wanted to be a burden to her children, and never wanted to feel like she was taking up too much of their time or energy. And yet, Life has a way of pushing even the most independent people into situations where they need others. Despite her best efforts to remain self-sufficient, she finds herself in a position where she has no choice but to rely on her children for support. This internal conflict fills Sachiko with a sense of discomfort and confusion. She wants to be independent, to remain strong and self-reliant, but the reality of aging and health issues makes it increasingly difficult. She feels torn between her desire to care for herself and the undeniable need for help that her children have, quite literally, been forced to provide. It is a humbling and emotionally charged experience for Sachiko, one that she never imagined she would have to face. She has spent so much of her life caring for others, nurturing her family, and providing for those she loves, that it is deeply uncomfortable for her to accept care in return. Yet, the more she resists, the more she finds herself dependent on them. This situation has left her heartbroken, struggling to reconcile her sense of pride and dignity with the reality of her circumstances. She cannot help but feel conflicted every time her children step in to assist her. Part of her feels grateful for their love and care, but another part of her feels that she is somehow failing them by needing help. She feels as though she is no longer the woman she once was, the strong, independent person who could handle anything that came her way. In her mind, she feels like a burden, and that thought is a heavy weight she cannot shake. In these moments of vulnerability, Sachiko finds herself questioning what it means to age with grace. She has always prided herself on being a pillar of strength for her family, but now, as the years wear on and the challenges of aging become more apparent, she is faced with a harsh truth that even the strongest among us eventually need help. And though it is difficult for her to accept, she is learning to embrace the care and support her children offer, even if it comes with the emotional struggle of feeling like a burden. Sachiko's story is a deeply emotional reflection on the complexities of aging, independence, and the unconditional love that binds a family together. It speaks to the universal human experience of learning to navigate the delicate balance between self-sufficiency and dependence, between pride and vulnerability. Though Sachiko's journey is filled with moments of struggle and heartache, it is also one of growth, acceptance, and the quiet strength that comes from allowing others to care for you when you need it the most. Her story reminds us all that it's okay to lean on others, and that, in the end, love and family are what truly carry us through the most difficult moments of our lives. One seemingly ordinary day, when the sun was shining and the birds were chirping, Sachiko stepped outside to buy groceries, unaware that her life was about to be drastically altered. The world, it seemed, had other plans for her. A simple misstep, one that could happen to anyone, sent her tumbling to the ground. The impact was harsh, her body aching with sharp pain as she struggled to move. The fall wasn't just a minor accident. It was serious enough to require an ambulance to rush her to the hospital. Her heart pounded in fear and uncertainty, not knowing the extent of the damage. When her children heard the news, they rushed to the hospital, hearts heavy with concern. By the time they arrived, Sachiko had already undergone emergency surgery. A large cold metal bolt had been inserted into her leg to secure the bone, a stark reminder of the severity of her injury. The doctor delivered the news. Her leg would need at least 6 months to heal properly, requiring constant care and attention. 6 months, a seemingly endless period in which she would have to rely on others for even the simplest tasks. Sachiko's mind raced with anxiety as she thought of the long road to recovery ahead. The thought of being dependent on others, of not being able to take care of herself, filled her with dread. She had always been the one who took care of her family, who managed everything with grace and poise. Now, she found herself in a position where she was the one who needed care, and the overwhelming vulnerability was too much to bear. The pain in her leg was one thing, but the emotional toll of feeling helpless and out of control was something far worse. Her children, determined to find a solution, gathered together as a family to discuss how they could share the responsibility of caring for Sachiko. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, and they wanted to ensure their mother received the best possible care. After much deliberation, they proposed a plan. Sachiko would spend 2 months at each of their homes, alternating between them every 2 months for the next 6 months. This way, Each of them could take turns looking after her while maintaining their own lives and routines. While the plan was practical on paper, for Sachiko, it felt like a betrayal of the comfort and familiarity of her own home. It wasn't just a place, it was her sanctuary, her haven of memories and comfort. The thought of leaving it behind, even temporarily, was unbearable. Yet, the reality was clear. She had no other choice. She reluctantly agreed, knowing that this arrangement would be the only way for her to receive the care she needed. Still, deep inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being uprooted, her roots torn from the ground. As the weeks passed and Sachiko moved from one child's home to the next, she quickly realized how profoundly different each house felt. No matter how much her children tried to make her feel comfortable, the homes never became her own. They were filled with their own lives and their routines, and she was just a guest in their world. The familiar warmth of her own home was missing, replaced by a coldness that seeped into her bones. She often found herself sitting alone, watching the world go by, feeling like an outsider in a place that was supposed to be a refuge. The saying, "A parent's home is always the children's home, but a child's home is not necessarily the parent's home," echoed in her mind, and the truth of it stung like 1,000 tiny needles. No matter how long she stayed at her children's houses, she couldn't escape the feeling of being a stranger. The meals, though lovingly prepared by her children, were often eaten alone in her room. They would prepare simple dishes and side dishes, but she would sit at the table in solitude, her heart aching with the absence of the lively family meals they once shared. The silence that filled those moments was deafening. There was no chatter, no laughter, no warmth. She missed the sound of her children's voices, the way they used to talk to her about their days, their dreams, and their worries. Now, the silence was oppressive, and her heart felt heavy with longing. What hurt even more was the subtle but unmistakable shift in her children's behavior toward her. Despite their best efforts to care for her, Sachiko couldn't help but feel that they saw her as a burden. She could sense their impatience when she asked questions or needed help with something simple. She noticed the way their faces tightened when she spoke, as though her words were too slow, too meandering, too much. The children who had once clung to her for comfort, for guidance, now seemed distant, detached, and almost irritated by her presence. Her mind often replayed memories of when they were young, when they would eagerly share every little detail of their lives with her, when they would sit on her lap and listen to her every word with rapt attention. Now, when she spoke, they barely looked up from their phones or computers. The distance between them was palpable. At first, Sachiko tried to ignore it, telling herself it was just a phase, just the growing pains of her children's lives. But as the weeks turned into months, the emotional distance became harder to ignore. She would try to start conversations, but they always seemed to fizzle out, leaving her with nothing but the echo of her own words. She tried to hold back the tears, not wanting to burden her children further, but sometimes the loneliness became too much to bear. What she wanted more than anything was to feel seen, to feel understood, to feel like she mattered to the people she had given everything to. But it seemed that with each passing day, her children's patience was running thinner, and her sense of self-worth was slowly eroding. She couldn't help but feel guilty, too. She knew she was slower now, that her body and mind weren't what they once were. Her thoughts took longer to form, and her words often got tangled in her throat. She had always been sharp, quick-witted, and precise in her speech, but now she struggled to express herself in a way that didn't frustrate the people around her. She understood, perhaps too well, that her aging was a burden to them. It wasn't just her body that had changed, it was her place in their lives. She was no longer the center of their world, no longer the one who held everything together. Now, she was the one who needed help, and that was a difficult pill to swallow. She had spent so many years caring for her children, raising them, nurturing them, and now it felt like the roles had reversed, and she was the one being cared for. But even worse, she could feel their frustration, their impatience, their inability to understand what she was going through. She often thought back to the days when her children were small, when they would look at her with adoration and trust, and when they would wait for her guidance. Those days felt so far away now. Why was it so hard for them to show her the same patience and understanding she had shown them? Why had the love between them shifted so dramatically? These thoughts swirled in her mind, leaving her heart heavy with sadness. She didn't want to be a burden, but no matter how much she tried to hide it, she knew she was. And the worst part was that she could never truly express how she felt. She couldn't tell them how lonely she was, how deeply their coldness hurt her, because she didn't want to make them feel guilty. She didn't want to burden them further with her pain. In the quiet moments, when she was left alone with her thoughts, Sachiko couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loss. She had lost the closeness she once shared with her children, the bond that had seemed unbreakable. She had lost the sense of being needed, of being important. And most painfully of all, she had lost herself in the process. The person she had been, strong, independent, and full of life, seemed like a distant memory. She was no longer the person who took care of everything. Now, she was the one who needed to be taken care of, and the realization was crushing. Every day, she tried to put on a brave face, to show her children that she was strong enough to endure this chapter of her life. But deep inside, she was unraveling. The weight of her emotions, the loneliness, the sadness, the helplessness, grew heavier with each passing day. And all she wanted more than anything was to feel like she mattered, like she wasn't invisible in her own family. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, it seemed that the distance between them was only growing. And with that distance, a part of her heart was slowly breaking. For 6 long, grueling months, I found myself moving between the homes of my children, seeking comfort and treatment for my injury. Each visit was a mixture of frustration, endurance, and longing for a sense of normalcy. My body ached, but it was the emotional strain of being away from my own space that was harder to bear. Every day felt like a battle against both the physical pain of my leg and the deep sense of being a guest in my own life. As my condition gradually improved, however, even the slightest sign of relief was enough for me to decide to return to my own home. No matter how small or humble it was my sanctuary. My home was the place where I could truly be myself again, and that feeling was something no other place could offer. There is a profound comfort in the familiarity of your own space, the scent of old furniture, the warmth of your bed, the sense that here you can finally be free. Despite its modesty, my home offered me a sense of peace that the grandest mansion could not have provided. Being under the care of my children, though, was a reminder of the price of dependence. I loved them dearly, and they gave me everything they could, but there was always an unspoken strain in those moments. I was acutely aware of how much of their own lives they had to rearrange to care for me. It was a delicate balance of love, but one where I felt like I was encroaching on their space. My presence was always a reminder of their responsibilities. In my own home, there was no such strain. I could cook when I was able, clean when I could manage, and I didn't need to rely on others to simply have a moment of solitude. The comfort of my own space was an indescribable luxury that I hadn't truly appreciated before. However, despite the peace my home brought, it was not without its challenges. The residual pain from my injury continued to nag at me, a constant reminder that life was not as simple as it once had been. Moving around became a painful endeavor, especially when I needed to go out. Every trip to the grocery store became an ordeal of willpower. The simple act of putting on shoes, stepping outside, and walking down the street became a Herculean task. I could feel the sweat trickle down my back as my legs screamed in protest. Yet I knew I had to do it. I had to be strong, as I always had been. But the effort was taking its toll, and I knew I couldn't keep pushing myself like this. I reached a point where it became clear that I needed help. It wasn't an easy decision for me to admit that, but I hired a live-in helper to assist with cooking, cleaning, and shopping. The cost was staggering, 260,000 yen per month, an amount that far exceeded what my meager pension could afford. It felt like an unbearable weight on my shoulders. How could I afford this? The pension that I had relied on for so many years which had seemed enough when I was younger, now felt like a mere fraction of what I needed to cover even the basics of life. The situation was made even more difficult because my children's contributions, though greatly appreciated, could not fully bridge the gap. Each month, they each sent 20,000 yen to help me make ends meet, but it never felt like enough. My heart ached at the thought that I was burdening them, my children, who already had their own lives and families to manage. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. But it wasn't just the money that weighed on me. Living in a modest home with a limited budget made it hard to offer my helpers anything beyond the basics. In wealthier households, helpers enjoyed better living conditions, ample meals, and some semblance of comfort. But in my home, there were no frills, no luxury meals or plush accommodations. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't offer the kind of environment they were used to, and more often than not, they left after just a few days. They were kind, but they couldn't stay. I felt their disappointment and frustration, and it broke my heart to see their faces as they packed up and left. I tried to understand. It wasn't personal. It was simply the nature of things. But the failure of each helper left me feeling more helpless. Eventually, I turned to a more affordable solution, a self-sustaining in-home care service. It provided care for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 180,000 yen a month. Although it was cheaper, it still placed a huge strain on my already limited resources. My pension, which I had once thought would be enough for me to live out my days in comfort, now felt like a cruel joke. Every time I wrote that check, I could feel the weight of my financial struggles press against me, suffocating my spirit. The worry about how to pay the next bill loomed over me, and I dreaded the thought of my children stepping in to help again. They had already done so much for me, and I didn't want to take any more from them. It was at this breaking point that I decided to enter a nursing home. It wasn't an easy decision, and in truth, it felt like an admission of defeat. The nursing home was simple, with no special amenities or luxury comforts, but the fees were affordable, something I could manage without placing an additional burden on my children. I thought it would offer a new kind of peace, a chance to ease my children's worries and allow them to live their lives without the shadow of my care hanging over them. For the first time in months, I saw them breathe a little easier. I saw the weight on their shoulders lift, and I realized that perhaps in my way, I had given them a gift, the gift of freedom from worry. However, my sense of freedom was quickly swallowed by the rigid structure of life at the nursing home. The schedules were strict, the rules suffocating, and I felt like a prisoner of my circumstances. It wasn't the right place for me. I had spent so much of my life as an independent woman, free to make my own choices, and now, here in this place, I felt like I was losing myself. The anxiety crept in, overwhelming me at every turn. I was anxious when I woke up, and anxious when I went to sleep. I couldn't stand the communal living, the lack of privacy, the constant regulations that made me feel like a child again. The nursing home, which was meant to be a place of refuge, felt like a cage. Within weeks, I decided to leave. It wasn't easy, but my heart ached for the freedom I had lost. I packed my things and returned to my own home, where the weight of the world was still heavy but somehow felt lighter. At home, even if I was alone, even if the pain of my injury remained, I had my dignity. I could make choices, to live on my terms. The world may not have been easy, but at least I was still in control of my own life. There is a profound beauty in that kind of independence, one that cannot be found in any institution or under any set of rules. It was a difficult road, but it was mine to walk, and for that, I was grateful. Returning to my own home, I found that despite the physical challenges, the pain, and the loneliness, there was a sense of peace in being in control of my destiny. It wasn't about rejecting help or defying my children. It was about holding on to the last shreds of the independence I had built my life on. It was about finding freedom, even in the most difficult of circumstances. In the end, I realized that home is not just a place. It is a feeling, a sense of belonging, and a source of strength that can never be taken away. After returning to her apartment, she resumed her simple and quiet life, which had become both familiar and comforting in its routine. The small, modest space had been her sanctuary for many years, offering her a refuge from the world outside. There was something deeply soothing about the stillness, the calm of being alone, even though at times the silence could be overwhelming. Her life was filled with the rhythm of everyday tasks, each day slipping into the next with a predictable ease. Yet, no matter how peaceful it seemed, the solitude also carried with it an undercurrent of loneliness, a reminder that she was facing the aging process on her own. At the entrance of her building, however, there was a small, bright spot in her life, a young couple who ran a modest shop selling miscellaneous goods. Their shop, tucked away in the corner of the complex, had become a welcoming place not only for the residents but for everyone who passed through the neighborhood. The couple was kind-hearted and full of enthusiasm, always greeting people with genuine smiles and infectious energy. Their warmth made the environment feel lighter, as if their very presence helped fill the gaps left by the quietness of her life. They were always attentive and always present. They noticed the subtle ways in which she struggled, how she carefully made her way across the pavement, leaning on a walking stick for support, and the way her hands trembled as she balanced her bags. It wasn't something she had to ask for, it was just instinctual for them. Whenever she went into the shop, they were there to help without a second thought, offering to carry her bags to her apartment or steadying her when her legs wavered. These small but profound acts of kindness became a lifeline for her, slowly dissolving the loneliness that clung to her soul. At first, she was hesitant to accept their help. She had spent much of her life independent and self-sufficient, and it was difficult for her to accept that she needed others. Yet, with every passing day, she realized how much these little gestures meant. They weren't just helping her with groceries or heavy bags. They were offering her something far deeper, a sense of connection, of being seen and cared for. It was as if, through their kindness, they reminded her that she wasn't invisible, that she mattered in a world that often seemed to overlook the elderly. As their interactions became more frequent, something quietly shifted. They didn't need to speak much to understand each other. She came to know them as more than just a young couple running a shop. They were her companions, the kind of people who truly made a difference in someone's life, even without realizing it. She began to look forward to her visits to the shop, not just for the convenience of the goods she needed, but because it meant she would see them, exchange a few words, and share a quiet moment. These exchanges were brief but significant, and over time, they developed a bond that was unspoken but undeniably real. The relationship, simple and uncomplicated, gave her a sense of peace, as though life's complexities had been momentarily set aside. Despite the warmth that now filled her days, her life, at its core, was still a quiet one. Stability was something she clung to, but it wasn't without its challenges. Living alone was often a reminder of the years that had passed and the years still to come. Loneliness was something she knew well, but it was also something she had learned to manage. She had become accustomed to handling everything herself, from the mundane tasks to the more difficult ones. But as she grew older, she couldn't escape the undeniable truth that her body was no longer as strong as it used to be. Her health was declining, and her steps were slower and more unsure. Each day, her body betrayed her in small ways, aches that didn't go away, the tightness in her joints, the struggle to keep her balance when she walked. She could no longer take for granted that she could rely solely on herself. Deep down, the anxiety of what lay ahead began to creep in, whispering in her ear late at night when the world was still, and her thoughts ran wild. There was a gnawing fear in her heart, a fear of the future. The idea that one day she might be unable to care for herself haunted her thoughts. Who would be there when she needed help? How would she manage when she couldn't stand on her own 2 feet? The uncertainty of aging weighed heavily on her, and it was a burden she carried in silence. She often tried to push these thoughts away, telling herself that it was too soon to worry, but deep within, the anxiety never quite left. Then, one day, as she sat in her apartment, a simple yet profound idea came to her. It wasn't something she had planned or anticipated, but when it emerged, it felt right. After much contemplation, she realized that perhaps it was time to ask for help. Not just for occasional errands or tasks, but for something more consistent, something that would ease the burden of her daily life. She had always been proud of her independence, but now, the idea of allowing others to help didn't feel like weakness. It felt like a solution, a way to regain control over her life, to make the next chapter easier to navigate. The young couple had already shown so much kindness, and she trusted them. They had become more than just familiar faces. They had become a part of her life. With a sense of vulnerability and hope, she decided to share her idea with them. She approached them one day, feeling the weight of her proposal but also the urgency of her situation. With a soft but steady voice she said, "I've been thinking about how things are going for me, and I wonder if you might consider helping me out a little more regularly. If you could spend a bit of time each day with me, helping with the chores, maybe preparing 2 light meals a day for me, I would be happy to pay you 110,000 yen a month for your time. I'm not asking for anything complicated, just simple meals and easy tasks that would help me manage my day-to-day life. And it would bring me so much peace of mind to know that someone is here to help, even in these small ways." As she spoke, her heart raced, unsure of how they might respond. But she also felt a sense of relief, as if sharing her worries out loud made them a little easier to bear. She explained that the meals didn't have to be elaborate. She only needed something light, nutritious, and easy to prepare. They were under no obligation to stay long, just a few minutes to help her feel more secure in her routine. What she was offering wasn't just a practical solution. It was a step toward easing the loneliness that often enveloped her. It was a way of inviting connection into her life, a way of acknowledging that she couldn't do it all alone anymore. And in that moment, she realized that asking for help wasn't just about getting the physical assistance she needed. It was also about finding a new kind of bond, one that was built on trust, understanding, and shared care. The thought of this arrangement, of having someone come by each day to check in, to help with the little things, filled her with a quiet hope. It was a small change, but it held the promise of a more secure, more connected future. No longer would she be solely responsible for every task, every worry. It wasn't just the meals or the chores that mattered. It was the knowledge that she wouldn't have to face the future alone. The young couple couldn't believe their ears when they heard her proposal. The warmth and sincerity of her words filled them with joy and gratitude. It was as though a door had opened, offering them an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life while also improving their own. The proposal was simple but incredibly meaningful. In exchange for 110,000 yen a month, they would dedicate around 3 hours every day to visit her home, where they would prepare 2 simple, home-cooked meals and tidy up the house. For the young couple, this wasn't just a job. It was a way to show care, nurture, and build a genuine bond with someone who needed it. What made the arrangement so fulfilling for them was the ease with which they could make a difference. The house, though modest, was always tidy, and since she lived alone, there wasn't much to do in terms of cleaning. This allowed them to provide care without feeling overwhelmed or stressed. The work wasn't physically demanding, but it gave them an immense sense of purpose and satisfaction. Each visit was a new opportunity to connect with her and help maintain a sense of comfort and dignity in her life. For the couple, the 110,000 yen per month was a blessing, but what made the experience so fulfilling was the emotional connection they formed with her. They took their responsibilities seriously but never forgot the importance of kindness, respect, and warmth. They treated her not as a person to be cared for but as someone they genuinely loved and valued. They would chat with her during their visits, share stories, and laugh together. The care they gave wasn't just physical, it was emotional and spiritual. They made sure that she never felt alone, always reassuring her that she had someone by her side, someone who truly cared for her well-being. As the days turned into months, the young couple and the elderly woman became more than just caregivers and recipients. They became a family in every sense of the word. They supported each other in ways that went beyond the tasks at hand. Over a year, the bond between them grew stronger. The couple's lives, once separate from hers, had now become intertwined with hers most beautifully and naturally. They celebrated small victories together, shared their struggles, and always found time to enjoy one another's company. It wasn't just about the work they were doing. It was about building a relationship grounded in trust, affection, and mutual respect. At 80 years old, the woman had never imagined that her later years could be so filled with peace, comfort, and happiness. She had always feared the idea of growing old alone or having to rely on costly services like nursing homes or caregivers. The thought of spending her last years in a sterile environment, away from the comfort of her own home, was something she could never come to terms with. But thanks to the young couple's help, she found a new way to live out her final years, independent yet cared for, secure yet surrounded by love. She was able to maintain her sense of dignity and control over her life, all while receiving the care she needed in a way that felt natural and fulfilling. She was deeply satisfied with the arrangement. She no longer had to worry about hiring expensive caregivers or burdening her family. She didn't need to leave her home or change the life she had worked so hard to build. Instead, she could stay in the place where she had so many memories and still be cared for. The 110,000 yen she paid each month felt like a small price to pay for the peace of mind and the emotional support she received in return. It gave her a sense of security that many people in their later years only dream of. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. One afternoon, as they sat down to share a cup of tea, the elderly woman spoke to the young couple in a tone that was both tender and full of emotion. "If you could take care of me until the end of my life," she said, her voice soft but steady, "I would like to give you a token of my gratitude. 1,000,000 yen. Her words were simple but carried such weight. It was clear to the young couple that this was not just about money. It was a gesture of profound love and appreciation. They were moved beyond words. This was more than just a financial gift. It was a heartfelt expression of her gratitude for all that they had done for her. The young couple, with tears in their eyes, looked at her with deep affection and responded, "You are a very kind and compassionate grandmother. We will always take care of you with all our hearts." At that moment, they knew they had found something truly special. They had not just gained a job or an income, they had found a bond that transcended any material exchange. Her offer, though generous, wasn't what touched them most deeply. It was the sincerity behind it. She wasn't offering money out of obligation or to fulfill a contract. She was offering it because she wanted them to know how deeply she appreciated everything they had done for her. And they, in turn, responded with promises of unwavering care and love. For them, this elderly woman had become more than just someone they helped. She had become family. They were committed to her care, to making sure her later years were filled with joy, dignity, and comfort. This experience serves as a powerful reminder that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to aging. Each individual's journey is unique, and what works for one person may not work for another. The most important thing is to find a way of living that suits your personal needs, desires, and circumstances. For the elderly woman, living independently in her own home with the care of the young couple was the perfect solution. She didn't need to be in a nursing home or rely on professional caregivers. She had found a balance that allowed her to maintain her independence while still receiving the support she needed. Some people may find joy and comfort in living with their children or grandchildren, surrounded by the love of their family. Others may prefer the freedom and familiarity of their own home, where they can live on their terms. Some choose to enter nursing homes or hire professional help, seeking the safety and security that comes with those options. The key, however, is finding what works best for you, considering not just your financial situation but also your health and emotional needs. For some, the answer may be to hire someone to help with daily tasks. For others, it may be as simple as having a few trusted people by their side, offering support and care in ways that feel comfortable and natural. Ultimately, the most important thing is to find a solution that brings peace of mind, security, and happiness. Whether that means staying in your home, moving in with loved ones, or seeking professional care, the goal is to live your later years in a way that feels fulfilling and comforting. This elderly woman's story is a testament to the power of human connection and the importance of finding care that doesn't just meet physical needs but nurtures the heart and soul as well. As we wrap up this heartfelt story, we hope you've gained some valuable insights about the power of human connection, the importance of care and compassion, and how simple acts of kindness can transform lives. Whether you're caring for someone or receiving care, we've all learned that the right kind of support can create a sense of peace and security that lasts a lifetime. So, what have you learned from this story so far? Is it the importance of finding a care routine that suits you, the impact of sincere human connection, or maybe the reminder that sometimes, family isn't always about blood, it's about love and trust? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below sharing one thing you've learned and how you plan to bring it into practice in your own life. If you like this video, don't forget to leave your comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring content. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.